What's up, y'all? I'm Anthony, and I'm a 30-year brain cancer survivor. I've had 11 operations. I have 2 brain tumors and a cyst now, and I refuse to give up. It's on my brainstem, so it cannot be removed, but like I said, I'm a fighter, and I've been sticking through it. And one of the best medicines that I know that has helped me, I want to talk about today. And this is my 2-year journey with RSO. So Rick Simpson was just a regular guy who had a fall at work back in the early 90s. And he knew that cannabis actually was, they were praising it for headaches and all that kind of stuff. So he said he was going to put together a concoction of cannabis to actually help with his headaches and stuff and vertigo because, he had got the prescriptions from the doctor, but they would only do so much and they weren't really working like he needed them to work. So he tried cannabis. He tried to put together a concoction of cannabis and it worked. It got rid of his headaches. And he took that all the way through. And then, but this is where the big change came in. Later down the line, about in the early 2000s, he was diagnosed with basal cell skin carcinoma, which for those of you who don't know, that is skin cancer. So he had stage 4. Well, there have been studies done back in the early days with scientists, and they were testing in the lab the cancer cells with THC. So they were putting THC on the cancer cells, and when they put THC on the cancer cells, all of them died. So they said maybe that was a mistake. So they tried it again. Same thing, all the cancer cells died. So that's when they thought that maybe they got something here. So they started looking at other ways. But, Rick Simpson had actually heard about that back in the day. He had heard what they did back in the day. And he knew that THC actually did this. So he tried to put together a concoction of THC and cannabinoids and see if it got rid of his headaches. It got rid of his headaches. And that was the beginning of RSO oil. So later down the line, Rick Simpson was diagnosed with basal cell skin carcinoma. He had stage 4, which is basically skin cancer stage 4. And if you know anything about stage 4 cancer, it can be really brutal. And he didn't want to go through the whole chemo route or anything. He wanted to try other options, holistic options. So he actually looked at, herbs and all that kind of thing. But he remembered that cannabis got rid of his headaches, years ago. And so he said, maybe I could create, something to help me get rid of, the cancer. So he started putting together a concoction of cannabis. And it had really high THC. And he started rubbing it on his spots. Disclaimer here. Back in the day, in the early days, there were studies done in the lab to show that high THC actually sprinkled on cancer cells or putting on cancer cells in mice actually killed them. They killed the cancer cells. So that's just a little backstory for you. So the spots were gone in days, and Rick Simpson went back to the doctor. The spots were gone, all the symptoms were gone, and the RSO, the Rick Simpson oil, the cannabis oil, it actually got rid of a lot of different things, and it actually healed. So that was the beginning of RSO, Rick Simpson oil. But I want to talk to you about how I found the RSO. So I found a lady online. Her name is Milana Smith. Back in 2022. So I had just had my 11th surgery. It was my 11th surgery to actually try to restore my hearing, because the tumor, I have a brain tumor, and the brain tumor had pressed on my acoustic nerve, and it severed my hearing. So I couldn't hear. And I was looking for relief. And when I got out of the hospital, they were able to restore my hearing after the surgery, but gradually. But then I started looking at other options to be able to help me, because I was still having headaches that were out of this world. And the doctor sent me home with Tylenol. And that wasn't helping me. So I looked at other options, and the guy across the street from me actually said, well, have you ever looked into CBD? And I hadn't looked into CBD at that time because I knew that that was part of the cannabis plant, and I never wanted to be a part of that cannabis plant at all. And I was totally against, THC as a whole. And he told me CBD, and it's just when you're sick, you're willing to do anything. And literally, I was sitting there with my hand in my hands, just like this for a couple days, just because I couldn't do anything because my head was hurting so bad. And he brought the CBD over. I took a CBD pill, and the headache was gone in 5 minutes. That was my first introduction to cannabis. So back to Milana Smith. Milana Smith was actually diagnosed with a brain tumor back in 2016. And it was a cancerous brain tumor. And the doctors told her she had up to 2 years to live no matter which treatment she chose, whether it was chemo, radiation, whatever she did. So I literally admire this girl, but she told them, well, I won't do your treatment. I won't do your treatment then. I will try and, go my route. And she literally, this girl she got in a wheelchair because she went paralyzed in one of her legs. It's so much. She was having hallucinations. She was throwing up. It was so much. But she started doing William Hoff's breathing method, and she started taking natural herbs. And she has a website, MilanaWellness.com. And she actually started doing William Hoff's breathing method, started taking the herbs from Dr. Sebi, and started, following the diet from Dr. Sebi. And she found RSO. Rick Simpson land. And at this time, so it's made now to be ingested. At that time when Rick Simpson made it, he made it with a different material it couldn't be ingested then. But now it's much safer to be ingested. So she started taking it. And every time she went to the doctor, the tumor was smaller and smaller and smaller. And in 9 months, the tumor was gone. And now she's here to tell her story. So I didn't believe her. When people say that, the tumor went away and that my vision improved, I mean, it sounds good, but it's just like, it's too good to be true. And if something is too good to be true, you think that, it can't be. And so I started looking into RSO a little bit more, and I saw that, it had been, praised by a lot of people. So when I was able to afford it, I decided to go ahead and try it. So I started taking, you can't start off with a gram a day. So I was taking about that much, maybe it's about half a gram or half a rice grain. So, and I would take it, and I noticed that I started feeling better. I was feeling better all the time. So this was back in 2023, I believe. And like I said, this started making me feel better. I don't know if this started making me feel better, but I started feeling better. And then I started taking it more and more, but I went back to the doctor maybe about 6 months after that. Get ready. The tumor was 2 centimeters smaller. 2 centimeters smaller. I went back home and I was taking it every day for a while as I could afford it. But if I couldn't afford it, then, it had to be what it is. So I had to stop taking the RSO because I couldn't afford it. It got too expensive. And, it was $25 a gram, $15 a gram. So, I just said a prayer to God, and my exact prayer to God was, Lord, if there is any way for me to get the RSO free, please let it happen. That was my prayer. I didn't think it would happen, but I believed. I believed, and like I tell you all, because I motivate all the time, you have to believe. This is one of my teachers. So I found this guy online. His name is Brian. And he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer maybe about 4 years ago. And they told him that he had 3 weeks to live. Doctors told him he had 3 weeks to live. They sent him home on hospice, and they said there's no point in doing chemo, you're not going to get any better. He went home and he prayed. He prayed. He got stomach cancer. And God led him to RSO. He found growers that would actually make the RSO for him. So they started making the RSO for him, and he would be able to get it from them. They started giving it to him free. And they just told him he had to help other people. And they said he had to be in Michigan, because he lives in Michigan. Guess where I am? In Michigan. I found him online, and literally, since last July, I have not paid for any Rick Simpson oil ever. And he doesn't just do it for me. He does it for other people too. But this is one of the stories that literally showed me that God is real. God answers prayers. Like, that is he saved me over $25 a day for RSO. That was getting really expensive. But I was getting better, and I was willing to do it because I was getting better. So I've been taking the RSO, and not only had the tumor gotten smaller, my vision had gotten better. And it's gotten better today than it had gotten then in 2023. Back then I still wore glasses, but now I don't wear them anymore. And, well, let's just be specific. I have a prescription for glasses, but it used to be a full-time prescription. Now it's just a distance. And I keep them in my car, but I don't wear them because I never need them. And I got to go to the doctor again, and they're going to check my eyes, but I got a feeling this time that I won't need glasses. But this is just to tell you all that, literally, if you believe, if you say out a prayer, you will get what you pray for. God does what he says he's going to do. Because I was literally spending all that money, and just a simple prayer, God provided.